But therefore my heart is glad, and my whole being rejoices. My flesh also dwells secure. For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol, or let your Holy One see corruption. You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. I feel like that's like the beauty of his salvation is that like when we receive his salvation, we receive his presence. And in his presence, there's fullness of joy and everything we could ever need. But he gives us pleasures forevermore at his right hand. Like the pleasures that we seek here do not compare to the pleasures he gives us. My parents got divorced when I was in high school, and I was a sophomore, I think. So I was like 15 or so. And I think that's like the biggest time of your life when you're really starting to become who you are and discovering more about what life is. And that really put a big wedge into things because I was an only child, and I felt like after I had this image of like, okay, this is a family unit, my mom and dad and me, and like feel love there, but after that is broken, I felt like I didn't know like what that meant anymore, and I felt left behind because, you know, my mom moved out and then I was with my dad, and then things were just really messy still, and I just felt like I was still like alone. And I was also trying to finish high school. So, and there's that thread of like having this empty space where I'm like, what's love? And can I find it here? Can I find it there? Senior year of high school was really hard for me. I had a lot of breakdowns, and I guess I felt kind of hopeless. I do remember though, like I had a little Bible that I would have on my like nightstand, and I would flip through it to try to find like some sort of, I don't know what I was looking for. I was just like close my eyes and like look inside and see like what it said. I had a background, understood, but I didn't fully grasp what God's love was yet until college. The past like 5-6 years of all that tragedy coming into freshman year of college when you're like trying to figure out what your life is. And I was doing okay until like the stress of like midterms hit and just being on my own and everything. Like I had a breakdown sitting by the vending machine. So I had that going on where I was like empty, hopeless, trying to fill my heart space with something, and I tried my own ways with my own hands, trying to make my own pleasures, but that never did anything. It just left me feeling more guilty. And I still had this thing in my head where I'm like, okay, I know God's real, or he's there, I think, because that's what I grew up learning, but I felt it in my heart that he was alive there. So I was just like in a moment of desperation in the middle of the night in my dorm room. I just told God, I'm like, God, if you're there, I need you because I got nothing. And the next day I go to a dining hall on campus and sat down and was eating my lunch, and this woman comes up to me. She was working on staff with crew at NU at the time. Her name was Sarah Shannon, now it's Sarah Johnson. But she had this little like ministry tool with little picture cards, and she asked me if I wanted to talk through it. She said it was like a spiritual survey, and I'm like, yeah, like I'm interested in that because I had the background already. So we talked through it, and she gauged like where I was at spiritually. And I don't know, I don't really remember, but I think like, you know, she took my number and she like kept following up with me. So we would meet in that dining hall like for dinner, and she went through like the gospel with me with a little tool that they had called Knowing God Personally. Just went through the 4 spiritual laws. But for some reason, like just that simple little booklet like made a lot of sense. And I don't know why the gospel never made sense before, but I think I just was too blind to see it until that time. But I think God opened my eyes to it, because once we got to the part where it was like, like what Jesus did for you, that he like died to give you life, it's like, oh my gosh, like this is the answer I'm looking for. Like unconditional love. So after we had finished that booklet, she told me like if I was feeling led to like let Christ into my life and let him be the Lord of my life, like I could just say this prayer and stuff. So I think it was that day or a few days later, but it was November 2012, like towards the middle of it. I was on my way to art history class and I decided to sit down on this bench on the lagoon, NIU Lagoon, and I took the little booklet out and I like flipped to the back with the prayer, and I was like, okay, God, like I want this. So I prayed the prayer, and I remember looking up through teary eyes, and I just saw like the lagoon all like gold sparkly because it was autumn and it was sunset, and that's the day that changed my life. With becoming a Christian and getting involved, I got involved with Crew like right away, because that's who talked to me was Sarah from Crew, but that's where I met like my good friends, and that's where I learned the most about like how to be a Christian, I feel like, because like they did a good job with Bible studies. I got involved with that. I don't know, God led me to like lead studies and be like passionate about like helping other women to be like, I guess, learners and doers of the word. And I don't know, like they just kind of built me up because I was just a little seedling, and then they like gave me all that I needed there in that little greenhouse at Crew to become more of who I'm supposed to be. Because I don't know, you just can't do it alone at all. And I remember I used to be really into plants, and I still am, but I remember like looking into, I forget, I was doing like a Bible study, and I used this example of like co-planting, which is where you have a plant and you plant a different one next to it to help it grow in certain ways. So like, let's say this other plant you plant next to it, it'll protect it by giving it different nutrients or giving it shade or things like that. I feel like that's the same with like being involved in your church body. It's like you're there, and then there's this person walking alongside of you that's kind of adding more to your growth in a different way. Just going to church, I feel like, doesn't do it with community. Like community is more about like walking side by side with people and going through the struggles of life together and sharing the gospel with each other during those times. Like we always are gonna have difficulties in our life, like every day, whether it's like a car problem or you got a lot to do at work or your dinner burnt at home, like marriage problems, like there's always something. And just to have someone there to tell you the truth about life and what God is doing in your life is so important. My name is Tiffany, and Jesus is the greatest gift in my life.